like to thank Gymshark for having us. Just a little story. I was at my monthly visit to the gym on Monday, and I'm like an anti-influencer. They pay me not to wear their stuff. But there was a dude, he was like rock solid, and he had the Gymshark shirt on. And maybe I just hadn't been aware of the brand, and I knew I was coming here. And I was like, told him I'm coming to Denver. He was like, "Oh, we should shoot a video. They should hire me as an influencer." And I was like, "All right, I'll let him know." So I did. That guy will know now. So, thank you. I want to introduce Joe, CMO of Wana Brands. Joe's a cannabis industry veteran, I would say. Also has some interesting background. Love to hear more about this. I have so many questions because it's, it's hard to be a marketer, as everyone knows, but then having people like fight against you presents its own challenges. So before we get into that, I think we have a clip.
For us, enhancing people's lives, we chose that phrase very carefully. If you are using cannabis for recreational purposes, it enhances your life because it just makes everything you're doing that much more enjoyable. If you are using cannabis for health and wellness purposes or medical issues, it enhances your life because you actually feel better and it's having the effect that you're looking for.
We don't let anything go out the door that's not consistent with the last batch. And if you ask people out there, that's what they'll tell you. Quality and consistency.
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 The reason to choose a Wana edible is it will be the best edibles experience out there. We are delivering products driven by science and research. And there's no other edibles product out there that is created with the care, thought, and passion that Wana edibles are. And it really comes through in the product and experience.
Wana has a huge emphasis on corporate social responsibility and community outreach. I think we all have a passion for making the world a better place, and Wana is our platform for being able to do that.
When I introduced Wana into my life, I was finally able to sleep.
I've been doing research on this ever since I got cancer. Using Wana brands on the medicinal side of things, it keeps my attention off the pain.
Anytime that any of my medical patients would take a gummy, it just did exactly what they wanted. They knew exactly what the dose is. That's all you need to know as a bud tender. If you have a product that you can stand behind.
We're the shit.
Beep.
That's great. Thank you.
Thanks for showing that. Appreciate it.
You have samples?
I did not bring these.
You
samples
get a gummy, and you get a gummy.
That would be a nice addition to the day, I think. But no, didn't bring any samples.
Or maybe for dinner. Don't tell. So it's, cannabis has been legal here in Colorado for a decade. It seems like
A little shy of that.
Yeah.
Since 2014.
Okay. I lived in Massachusetts, legal there, medical, now recreational. But so what, can you just give us an update on your progress as Wana Brands and the industry, and hear what the state of the market is, I guess?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I was just thinking as Henry was talking earlier about Gymshark and being a disruptor and changing some things as it relates to apparel and fashion. We're still so very early in cannabis that the thought of being a disruptor at this point is ridiculous, because we're still kind of building things. It's happened as rapidly as it can, but it's only been, really 10 years of adult use legalization, a little less, like I was saying earlier. But since January 2014, we now are, I lose track. I used to know this stat off the top of my head, but we're at about 35 states, I think, that's either medical or recreationally legal. About 19 states where it is recreationally legal. And that's in the period, again, of 9 years. So pretty massive growth. And every market that starts is a brand new market, right? In the sense that there's not a national platform for this. There's not e-commerce. There's not a way to reach consumers across the country. So we have to, every state is a brand new industry, so to speak, in that state. And so we're about to see that in New York. We're seeing that in New Jersey. I was just out there on the East Coast about a week and a half ago, and it's a completely different beast than it was in Colorado, than it is in California. So a lot of growth. And for Wana, that means currently we're in 15 states plus Canada. So we've actually become an international brand, which is kind of cool. But tremendous amount of growth, tremendous amount of excitement, but we're still doing all that without banking, without it being federally legal. with all the hurdles that we face in all of these markets. So it is a trying industry to say the least.
So is each state its own basically market or battleground where you have to have production and like rebrand? Like, is there, how much cross-state brand knowledge is there, I guess?
It's a great question. And, I think the first half of your question I can answer by saying, yes, each state, each market is its market. We say that all the time in our company. A market is a market, right? Because each market is different. They have different rules, different regs. Our packaging in Florida is black and white only. Our gummies have to be no color because of the regulations there. So, as marketers, you guys can imagine if your product was completely different in Florida than it does in Colorado, it's a little bit of a challenge, right, to create that brand recognition. But I would say that as we have added states, we've reached a tipping point where that person in Maryland saw us in Colorado or saw us in Oregon, and now they know that brand when they get back to Maryland, and we legalize Maryland, and they can access our products there. So for Wana in particular, because of our footprint, we've been able to leverage that a little bit. But overall, it's really challenging to build a true national brand in this industry because of each of those market by market challenges. And I don't see that changing anytime soon, even with legalization, because if they were to legalize cannabis at the federal level, they're still going to have state by state kind of rule of regulation for cannabis for the foreseeable future. Luckily, I know who
We know who you are. You're right there. Yeah. So is it mainstream in those states that we're in? Is it mainstream nationwide?
We were talking about this on the call, right? So the question is, what is the tipping point? When did it become mainstream? Is it mainstream? My guess is that if I asked everybody in this room, assuming that most of you are from Colorado, you'd probably say it's pretty darn close to mainstream here, right? I went to New York last week, as I was mentioning. New York was shocking to me. It was I was in Times Square. Every store that used to sell maybe, vapes and glassware or even cell phones, they're now selling cannabis brazenly, illegally, right there in the middle of Times Square, without a license, without regulation. I'm hoping that the state of New York or Manhattan, New York City, cracks down on that, because that's not good for the industry. It's not good for the consumer. But point is that, when you see that in Times Square, that indicates a little bit of mainstream, right? You have Biden making statements about the fact that it's crazy that it's still illegal and on the same level as heroin and other really dangerous drugs. So we're getting there, but the stigma is still significant. And it's not, I think mainstream is, do I see it, when I go to a stadium and is there advertising for it? Can I access it easily? Just walk into a store, grab it and go. All of these barriers that exist today are going to exist for a lot longer time. So I think the acceptance of cannabis is growing, and I think we're reaching a tipping point. Obviously, the American public, I think to the tune of about, recent survey I saw is 56% are in favor of recreational legalization, and somewhere in the range of 72% are okay with medical legalization. So obviously from that standpoint, it is approaching mainstream, but there are so many barriers that we have to remove to be able to really get to that point where it is ubiquitous and it's a product like any other product. So we're still pretty far away from that, I think.
Yeah. And just, I'm aware of some of these issues, but we have a lot of digital marketers in the room. Can you just, give us a life in the day of trying to digitally market cannabis, I guess?
Let's see. So, obviously we have websites, right? So we're at least that advanced, right? So we have websites. We don't have e-commerce, by the way. So that is a function of the fact that in order to transact cannabis, you have to be in a dispensary, you have to use cash for the most part, and you have to pay that dispensary for that product. So we as Wana can only remain wholesalers. We don't have a direct consumer model, except in California, where because of their regulations, brands can actually sell direct to consumer pseudo. So they basically outsource that to a third party that does delivery directly of their products. It's complicated. It is a little bit, I think, transparent to the consumer in this, or not transparent, but the consumer doesn't see that in the sense that they just order the product from their favorite brand and it gets delivered to them. But that's the only state where that model is working. And I get hit up a ton, like a dozen times a day, like I'm sure many of you guys do, from partners on the digital side looking to improve my ROI, looking to get greater audience, looking to fill top of funnel for me. And the problem is it doesn't really work in cannabis right now. And I have to look at digital right now as a brand in cannabis, not as a retailer. I have to look at digital as an awareness platform only. It's not a conversion platform for me, which really kind of removes a lot of the power of digital, right? Because I can't just turn up a campaign and say, what was my ROI on that? Did I drive traffic? Did I sell product? I don't know, because the dispensary platforms, the back end on the point of sale systems, they're so disparate. Plus, they don't want to give us the information and the data that I just don't know, right? So back to your original question, day in the life on the digital side is I've got a heavy emphasis on social. So Instagram is a big platform for us, even though the threat of getting kicked off Instagram exists daily. So we can make one wrong post or a post they don't like, or someone else that doesn't like it and reports it, and we get taken down. So then our 40,000 plus followers disappear instantly. So how much do I want to invest in that, knowing they can be pulled out from underneath me? LinkedIn's been a great platform for us. We can actually be fairly straightforward, and we get a lot of traction there. So on the social side, it's really LinkedIn and Instagram that do a good job of the heavy lifting for us. And then beyond that, I do run programmatic campaigns every now and again. But back to the point, they're mostly for visibility and for awareness, not for conversion. And then we have some specialized tools within cannabis that have grown up within the industry. We use a partner called Zoltrain. They do a great job with a more interactive SMS platform. So we partner with a dispensary. Zoltrain provides a landing page essentially for a text campaign that is a little bit more interactive, provides a lot of education. So they do a great job of that for us. We also use them for digital training. So it's not quite the direct consumer digital that you're probably referring to, but we use the Zoltrain platform for training bud tenders across the country, because education is a critical component of our platform overall.
Okay. So it sounds like it sounds like you're like a CPG company where you don't control the channel. You have the prohibitions of a liquor company online where you can't advertise.
Keep going. You got it so far.
Yeah. And then the California thing is probably because the vineyards shipping direct they've converted that. Like you couldn't get wine 10 or 15 years ago delivered to your house. So you're kind of in that brand play. So it's like a matrix that you're having to fight through. So tell me what do you focus on in order to grow and make progress? Well, let's say industry wide, what are you focused on to kind of get the other 15 states? And then specifically for your brand, what do you do?
Well, so I want to take a step back first and talk about the expansion in the 15 states. So there's really two different ways to do that as a brand. One is what we do. Well, I'll tell the other one first. One is where you get a license in each state. You build out a facility in each state because you can only manufacture in that state. You can't, there's no interstate commerce. You can't import from somewhere else. So you have to manufacture in the state that you're in. And then you have your own sales team, your own marketing team, basically building a replication of the company state by state, right? That's one model. Very capital intensive, a little bit slower. We opted for an asset light model. So we partner in every state with a third party that does our manufacturing for us. And it spans the gamut of strictly a royalty program all the way up to co-manufacturing, where we're handling sales and marketing in the market. And it again varies by market, but point is that we have now 15 different partners, right, that we also have to manage on top of everything else. So that also is a brand challenge in the sense of we have to have really strong QA and SOPs on our end to ensure that our partners are making the products the way that we tell them to, that everything about the brand is looking appropriately on the shelf. And that's a big challenge. I mean, I can't tell you the number of partners who are like, hey, we had a little problem with the labeling. It's a little bit, off. Can we put those on the shelf? And we're like, no, that doesn't meet our brand standard. You can't do that. Right. So that's the challenge of expanding to 15 states. And but the asset light model has allowed us to do it more rapidly. So that's why we are, I believe, the largest footprint from a manufacturing company in the industry currently. And we're going to continue to do that. So New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Virginia, there's a ton that are on the docket that we're going to continue to launch. And then in terms of, what was the other half of the question? I know I stepped back for a
Well,
second.
I mean, so we were talking about like the day in a life and
Yeah.
so it sounds like on the manufacturing side, like if you're in every state, every market, as many dispensaries as possible, you should win on a brand play without that being able to market like Budweiser, basically.
Should.
Yes.
However, so because
Sorry,
it's
Coors. I meant to say Coors. I forgot where I was.
should have corrected you on that. So I say, however, because this is a nascent industry and because it is highly regulated and licensed, really all you have to, once you get a license, and depending upon how the state decides to set up their licensure. So in Colorado, for example, we do have caps. It's a fairly robust market in the sense that we have, upwards of 500 dispensaries, probably, similar number of manufacturers and cultivation. In Oklahoma, they had unlimited licenses. So anybody could get a license, set up a brand, start manufacturing. And you can imagine when you have 2,000 dispensaries and as many brands in a market the size of Oklahoma, two things are occurring. One, there's a bunch of product that's going out the back door illegally to other states, but that's a separate issue. Two, price compression, right? Because everyone's vying for that same market share. There's not enough market share for everybody because cannabis is not ubiquitous to our earlier discussion. And so there's a significant amount of price compression in almost every market. So as we look at markets, we're looking at markets also on the basis of what's their regulatory structure? Does it favor a brand like ours coming in and really being able to maintain our price point, maintain our premium positioning? Or is it Oklahoma or California where it's an absolute free for all and price compression is such that people are losing money hand over fist? I mean, I think there's a perception that cannabis companies, make a ton of money. Very much not true. I mean, it's in fact very much the opposite of that. So we have to be really careful about the markets we go into to make sure that we can maintain that premium positioning, even with the pricing pressures that we see. Michigan was a great market for us. Then they had a little bit too much raw plant material. So that's obviously the cannabis that starts the whole process, right? That flooded the market. You had a bunch of new players that entered. Price dropped. I mean, I've never seen something happen so quickly. Within 3 to 6 months, what was, let's say, you pay an average of, I don't know, $20 on the shelf for a 100 milligram product. Last time I was there 2 months ago, they were selling 700 milligram units for the same for $20. So, I mean, when we talk about price compression, there's no rationale. There's no business acumen behind it. It's strictly, can I stay alive? How cheap does it, do I have to be to get people to come in my doors and buy this product so that I have cash flow? And that's how the mentality is in a lot of the markets that we're in, unfortunately. So for Wana, it's a constant struggle to stay above that fray and maintain our position by also then supporting our positioning of premium with innovation, with product quality, with consistency. And so that's kind of our approach to the market.
That's an economic factor that I guess everyone's going to face soon anyways. So tell us about, I don't know, a couple campaigns that have been successful with whichever market, but that you worked on and what's working, I guess.
Yeah, well, there's a couple of things that I think work for us. One is we're very education based. So a lot of what we do is really educating the consumer. You saw in that video, there were a couple of clips of content that we've used to put in the market in regards to how our products are made, what is the science behind them, that kind of information. So at a high level, in general, our education campaigns work very well for us. Specifically, this past year was really the first time we've been able to launch what I'll call a more national approach to a couple of campaigns. And we're hopefully going to continue to do that into the coming year. So we had what we called our Summer of Quick campaign, and we had our Forward 20 campaign. So Forward 20 obviously would tie to 420, which is the big cannabis event of the year. And we were able to tie that to a very strong CSR component. You heard about that a little bit in this video content. We have a very, very strong focus on CSR, on making our communities better. And so most of our programs will tie to some element of CSR. In the case of Forward 20, we were able to support, I think we were in 12 markets with it, and we supported some type of food insecurity platform in each of those markets, tied that back to the dispensary and the point of sale. We're able to generate visibility for making 420 about, yes, enjoying and consuming, but also figuring out how to give back to your communities. That was very successful for us, I think. And then, but if you ask me for data, I'm going to be hard put to tell you that because all I have is our data in terms of the wholesale sales, which doesn't give you a great reflection of that. But then our Summer of Quick campaign this summer, this was the second year we've run it. I heard Henry talking about IRL events. IRL is super important for this industry because we don't have e-commerce. So we do a lot of pop-ups where we visit a lot of dispensaries. That's the best way to reach our audience because we know they're going to be there versus trying to drive traffic to a dispensary, which is a heavy lift for a brand. We're saying, okay, they're already going to be at the dispensary. Now let's make sure when they're at the dispensary, we're the product they choose. So our Summer of Quick campaign incorporates a traveling van, a bunch of sort of parking lot events that allow people to really engage with the brand more broadly than just the product. And we took that to multiple markets. And I think that I'm just, in fact, a couple of days late, I'm reviewing the wrap-up document for that. So I'll tell you if it was a success. I tell you from my gut, I would say it was a success, but I don't have the numbers yet.
Okay, fantastic. Well, you mentioned giving back to the community. I know you guys were acquired or investment and started a foundation. I heard a little bit about it. If you tell me more.
Yeah, well, and hopefully in that video you guys saw there is a passion and a joy that our employees have for working with Wana, and Nancy, who's our CEO, is a big part of that. So yes, we had a wonderful transaction, and she took a big chunk of that, $50 million, and started a family foundation, the Wana Brands Foundation, with those dollars. So that allows us to indirectly give back, give back to our communities through the foundation, as well as through our own corporate CSR efforts. But pairing those things together makes it a much stronger play. It is part and parcel of everything we do. So any market we go into, any campaigns we run, we're trying to tie some element of how we support that community, because our belief, even though we are 100% okay with everyone using cannabis recreationally for fun, doing whatever they want with it, we also believe it does enhance lives and makes lives better. And so we wanted to dimensionalize that a little bit more and say, okay, we've got a product that does that. We're all passionate about the plant. We all believe in what we're doing, but how can we make that even better? And we do that through our CSR efforts.
I guess what's next for the industry, and like, what do you see like future forward? Like, how do we?
That's a $1 million question, right? So every year, everyone gets excited about legalization. Everybody in the industry is like, oh, I talked to Senator so-and-so, and I heard that we're going to, that this is moving to the floor and it's going to get voted on this year. And it never, or hasn't happened to date. Now, Biden's announcement was probably the most visible step forward in that progress, but there's so much hair on these bills, right? There's so many different things attached to cannabis legalization that for me to count on even Biden or the president, whoever is the president, pushing that forward, it's a really big lift for any single politician to make, right? So legalization is always on the tip of our tongues. We're always talking about it. And by the way, within the industry, there's a lot of back and forth as to whether or not legalization is good or the right thing to do, because there's a lot of challenges that are going to come with legalization. So who kind of has control over this industry? Is it the FDA? Is it, does it allow pharma to come in? There's a number of different ways that legalization can take place, not all of which benefit companies like us or even the end user consumer. So we have to be cognizant of that. So legalization is huge. This price compression I was talking about, there's going to be a massive consolidation over the next 6 to 12 months, which is good. It's healthy, right? This is a cycle that nascent industries need to go through to be able to get healthier and grow stronger, but it's going to be painful. And I think we're going to see that again we're seeing it currently, but it's going to ramp up in the next 6 to 12 months. And then I think lastly, we are beginning, and I think Wana is a leader in this, we're beginning to see a shift in terms of moving away from, well, that's not true. There's an audience that's firmly planted in the idea that how high can I get for how cheap, right? So that's always going to exist, which is also fine. But then there's another category of use case specificity with the product that we're beginning to see really take place. And you saw on the screen for a brief second our sleep product, for example. So that's a product that is made specifically for sleep. It works really well. And more and more new consumers are finding out that cannabis can be a replacement for other products that they're taking, pharmaceutical products, whatever. It can help them live a healthier life. So I think we're going to see more of that as it becomes more and more popular. I think there's a disconnect right now because in order to get that product, you have to go into a dispensary. Many people, actually, quick show of hands, how many people in this room have been to a dispensary? All right, so at least probably maybe a majority, but like half the room. So getting that other half of the room to go into a dispensary is a challenge because it's not a super consumer friendly. If I heard Henry talking about frictionless transaction, we are actually friction full. We try to add friction at every corner to make it more difficult for people. So I think getting people into the store to buy a sleep product if they've never used cannabis is a real challenge. They may look at it and say, like, that's a great idea. I would do that if I could get access to it. Well, until I can sell it to them directly, it may be a challenge. But I think that's where we're heading, though, is a broader array of products that really do help support a healthier lifestyle.
Great. Anything else before we open up to questions?
No, actually, great questions because I was able to talk about a lot of the stuff I wanted to talk about.
Okay.
So
all right. Good. Any questions?
Brian Reese from Google. I guess in the video that you showed, talked a lot about consistency. I think the market overall, like building that brand loyalty seems like a big opportunity. How are you guys using like first party data? Are you using it? How are you using it with being, not owning that point of sale? It seems a little bit more difficult. So I'd love to hear a little bit more how you look at that.
It is super difficult. And being with Google, you'll appreciate the fact that Google doesn't like us very much. I'm not saying you don't like us, but Google doesn't like us very much. So getting data outside of sort of first party data is challenging in general. But we actually just invested in our first, what I would call true consumer research project for a new product that we're launching, back to this healthier lifestyle discussion. I'll spill the beans here a little bit, but it's an exciting product because it's super low dose. It's really meant to target anxiety. But our challenge, and it's really, I find it fascinating, I'm sure you guys as marketers probably would as well. The challenge is that you're selling that product through a dispensary where the bud tender is used to selling price per milligram. How much is 100 milligrams? How much is 200 milligrams? How cheap can I get it? That's kind of the mentality of the bud tender. Many of them are heavy consumers and users. So they're not used to selling a product that, let's say, is 1 milligram of THC. That just doesn't make sense to them. In addition to which, the person who's going to buy that product, who's going to benefit from it, probably isn't at this point going into the dispensary for the product. But back to the question, we fielded I wouldn't call it a robust study, but we fielded a study to get feedback directly from consumers to understand how they're interacting with it, what price point they buy it at, some price elasticity data and things like that. That's as close as I can really get. I have to drive that myself. I don't have a good way to get it otherwise. And I get hit up all the time. And the first thing I say back, if I see something that's even remotely interesting, I say, I'm in cannabis, right? And 9 times out of 10, I either don't hear back from them or they say, oh, sorry, I wasn't aware of that. We can't work with cannabis. So.
Hi, I'm Yuna, and I'm here from Gymshark. Back in 2021, last year, Amazon backed bills to legalize marijuana, and there was a lot of talks like they stopped drug testing their employees. They said one of the reasons they were doing this was to see if there was like an increase in employee productivity by having them legally consume cannabis. A lot of analysts were skeptical of the reasons. They thought that them potentially legalizing cannabis would open a new door for a lucrative market. How do you think if down the line, many years in the future, Amazon were to sell cannabis in their websites, how would that affect the industry and your marketing model?
Oh, it's going to happen. And it's going to be cataclysmic for the industry. So we all know this, right? So we all know that's going to happen. And back to my point about legalization, a very good example as to why some people aren't in favor of legalization, because they don't want Amazon to come in and just, make everything pretty much the same. You can buy it all online and, everyone else is out of the industry, because there is an element of passion and science that goes behind this that maybe Amazon won't be able to communicate. To the first part of what you're saying about some of their recent posturing, undoubtedly it's the business opportunity they see, right? So they step back for a while. We haven't been able to advertise on Amazon. They still don't allow us to advertise on Amazon. Even CBD products were prohibited on Amazon. So it's a little bit hypocritical, right? And from that standpoint, we all saw that and heard that and recognized it. But we also know that it's really the driving factor is that they want to get in, see the industry, understand what's going on with the industry, understand who the consumer is, and then come in and dominate it, which, that's their right to do so. And that's, obviously what they do with other industries. So I would expect them to do that here. What's very interesting though, about one little thing that you said, and I just want to throw this out there because these are all the side issues of cannabis that as we are growing this industry, we have to come to terms with is a company like Amazon. And I don't know where they ended up on this, but that says we're not going to drug test employees anymore. Well, cannabis stays in your system for a period of time, well beyond 24 hours, right? So insurance is a really interesting. It's an interesting issue for us in the industry right now because if we tell employees that we drug test, that's not going to sit very well, right? That seems pretty hypocritical. We know our employees enjoy cannabis. We want them to enjoy cannabis, right? But let's say they have an accident on the floor when they're producing something, and we have to drug test them. They're going to test positive for cannabis. Then they don't get the full insurance benefits. It's a really significant issue that hasn't been fixed, to my knowledge, yet. So these are the kinds of things before true national legalization occurs that I think are going to have to be thought through on a company by company or a national basis.
Hi, my name's Ellen. I'm also here with Gymshark. So, 3-5 years ago, Wana was maybe one of the only edible companies that you saw consistently. And now that's obviously changed and there's way more. So with you not being able to, advertise and stuff like that, how do you guys try to differentiate yourself from all the other up and coming brands?
Great question. And, even 3 to 5 years ago, there were a lot of companies, not a lot of them had the following that we did. Wana was started in 2010. So we've had at least the benefit of 12 years to build that brand. But the question you asked goes back to a lot of the challenges we mentioned earlier about what channels can I use? How do I launch products? And so social media, education, bud tender, loyalty, because I would average, and this is not a scientific answer, but 80% of decision making is influenced by the bud tender. So you may walk in and know product you want, but if one of our competitors happens to be doing a bud tender promotion where they can make an additional $1 for every unit they sell of this other product, they're going to say, well, you know what? You really want to try this product, not Wana, right? So that can thwart everything I've done to get that consumer to the store to buy the product. But the point there is making sure that we're in front of the bud tender and creating loyalty. It's a big part of what we do. And so we have to constantly train, educate, swag makes this industry run. I mean, it is crazy. That is the biggest part of my budget. You guys might say digital advertising for your budgets. Swag. I mean, I spend a shit ton of money on swag. So much so that I'm embarrassed to go to my CFO. I'm like, this is my swag budget. I don't know what to tell you. So creating that loyalty is important. And then lastly, when you ask about differentiation, really our differentiation is quality, consistency. That's great. I think a lot of companies have that. We talk about gummies that are good enough when the price point is significantly different. But what we offer is differentiation as it relates to technology, as it relates to the experience. People come back to our product because they have a consistent experience over and over again. And if anybody is a regular cannabis consumer in here, it's pretty important. You want a product you can trust, that you know what the experience is going to be, and it's going to be the one that you want. So it's really a lot in the product. When you think about brand, maybe a little, well, I was going to say for Gymshark, it's everything we talked about earlier, it's frictionless, it's great customer service, it's good quality products. That is the brand. So too for Wana, right? So it starts with our product. And I'd like to take credit for saying, I've helped build a great brand, but the truth is that's the entire company. It's every aspect of everything we do that brings a brand forward to the consumer.